Mains cleaners are a thing of the past. Dyson were well ahead of their time and pioneered the concept of the cordless stick vac almost a decade ago. As soon as the V10 launched in 2018, designed to replace the mains plug-in cleaners, Dyson stopped developing new mains machines, although do continue to sell them. So what were Dyson's final plug-in machines, and how good were they? Their last upright model was the Dyson Ball Animal 2, and their last cylinder model was the similarly named Dyson Cinetic Big Ball Animal 2. The Americans didn't get either of these models. Cylinders were never popular there, and the last upright they got was a model that was essentially an updated version of the old DC-41. The performance of these two machines is truly excellent, and even today blows away most of the competition. In fact, the Dyson Ball Animal 2 upright has the best performance of any vacuum cleaner on the market. Following my usual procedure of looking at the rate of extraction of 20 grams of representative fine dust from a deep piled carpet with waterproof backing, I looked at their relative performance and also compared to their intended cordless replacements, the latest version as of recording being the V11. They all removed almost all the embedded dust after just a single pass. The extraction rate of the cylinder isn't as high initially, which is probably down to the straight suction head I'll talk about later, but catches up in the end. The V11, when used in its default auto carpet mode with the suction gates on plus, which it's designed to be used in normally, outperforms the straight suction head of the cylinder initially and eventually captures almost all the dust. This demonstrates yet again that the V11 is absolutely able to go toe-to-toe with the highest performing mains cleaners on the market and absolutely is a replacement for a mains cleaner. On boost mode, the V11 performs slightly better, although you're not supposed to use this mode for regular general cleaning because you'll kill the battery. As battery technology improves in the future, along with improvements to their market-leading motors, performance will only improve. And of course, the performance king is the upright, which gets almost all the embedded dust in just one pass, which is amazing. This is despite only having 90 air watts, showing just how irrelevant this parameter is and how it doesn't directly relate to cleaning performance. Only power consumption and cleaning performance matter. After 6 passes, it had extracted everything. This is what the best performance on the market looks like, although admittedly it's extremely tiring to use the vacuum in this high performance mode because it grips harder to the floor. The suction is so strong on this machine that it can produce a high air speed through the pile, and that is utilised so effectively by the amazing cleaner head I'll talk about later that it achieves this kind of performance. The absolute king of performance, just as all the independent testing to formal industry standards also confirms, which again provides some credibility to the respectability of my testing, although I hasten to add that it's no substitute for formal industry testing. The cylinder comes with a rotating turbine head, which is designed for pet hair. I'll talk more about this later, but the performance of this head is actually superior to the pneumatic head. This air-powered turbine head is very narrow though, and it's not really practical to vacuum large areas of floor. The upright also comes with a similar tool, but it didn't perform as well. The performance is still exceptional though, and far better than many modern cleaners. But this tool was never designed for wide area floor cleaning on this upright, and was intended to help reach under low furniture, as I'll discuss later. I also looked at the performance you get on the upright if you turn off the brush bar to see what impact it has. As expected, the performance drops, but still remains exceptional relative to other cleaners. This shows the importance of both strong suction and how well it's utilised by the action of the brush bar. It has nothing to do with agitation and all the noise and large particle bouncing, as I've shown in other videos on my channel. Fine dust is semi-sticky and doesn't even respond to vibration, unlike large heavy particles like sand, which are no threat to human health. The important function of a brush bar is to separate pile, to dislodge netted and trapped particles so that air can flow past them at speed to accelerate them out of the pile. The wider brush bar design on the latest Dysons helps achieve the incredible performance seen here and on the V11. Each of these cleaners and heads is capable of simultaneously removing larger particles and fine dust on hard floors without leaving anything behind, unlike some of the poorer cleaners. My main criticisms of these machines are the same as apply for all old-fashioned mains machines. They're heavy, bulky, noisy, suffer from fiddly cord hassle, and are relatively much more cumbersome to use, especially for stairs cleaning, which is a total chore. Most of the weight is in the big heavy motors, which lack power density and are noisy. Having said that, these two machines impressively excel beyond the competition at minimizing many of these problems, especially given their extreme performance. Firstly, the power consumption. Really poor cleaners, like the Cibo Felix and similar, only achieved good performance by guzzling massive powers appallingly wastefully. And that performance drops when turning the motor power down, whilst keeping everything else about the design the same. These two Dyson machines only use 700 watt motors, showing just what can be achieved with good and efficient design, and proving beyond all doubt that the idea that reducing motor power automatically results in a reduction in performance is just not true. It might be true for the Cibo, but if you design well and efficiently, you can use much less and still improve performance. This has become quite an awkward and embarrassing fact for those that angrily suggested otherwise back at the time. These are the quietest mains machines I've ever heard for their performance level. They really succeeded where others failed, or didn't even care, in minimizing noise levels. All the piercing high-pitched tones have been engineered out, leaving a soft muffle sound. They're both really quiet and pleasant at just 70 decibels at 1 meter, which is the same as the V11 achieves in its default mode. Without a doubt, the best sound engineering on any mains upright I've seen for their performance level. Stairs cleaning is a relative pain though on both machines, and Dyson were absolutely right to do away with the cylinder and upright form factors. Because most cleaners don't reach all the way up the stairs, the approach is to bring the unit with you and rest it on the step. The canister fits nicely onto a step and is fairly sturdy. It's small enough that you can even get away with not holding it and letting your body prevent any accidental falling. This is much easier than the horribly heavy nightmare that was the Kirby, or the bulk fest of the Cibo. The upright again doesn't have the reach, and it pulls back too hard when on anyway, so again is best rested on a step and bringing it down with you. Because it's taller, it's easier to topple relative to the cylinder, so needs holding. The superior cordless form factor requires just a simple tool change to get on with the stairs cleaning, and is a hugely better approach. Both machines come with a tangle-free turbine head, which, while noisy as hell, is the most effective tool I've ever seen designed to avoid tangles, and I'm only surprised a quieter and motorised version hasn't been offered with the handhelds yet. Not that their mini motorised tool isn't good. The V10 and V11's tool is the best in class I've ever used or seen on any product thanks to its power and articulating head. The upright form factor is nicer to use, but pushing and pulling that much mass offers large inertia, meaning it's much more tiring. This is why the stick vac form factor excels. It's so light and easy to push. The cylinder is easier than the upright in that regards because you only move the light wand, and possibly why it was invented, but you've got to then manage the trailing unit, yanking it behind you and getting in the way, along with the cord. Yet, both machines are otherwise far more manoeuvrable than competitors due to the refined ball design. Although the upright is far harder to turn on a dime when it's on, because the suction really prevents the head from being as agile. This isn't a problem on the cordless stickbacks though. It's also slightly harder to reach in tighter spaces, but it's much better at this relative to the worst competitor products out there, due to a slender design without protruding pipework. The slender wand of the cylinder can avoid this, much like the stick vac format. It's worth talking about the kinetic technology though now, that's in the cylinder version. There were myths that kinetic technology couldn't work on lower power machines, but it's used well in this 700 watt cylinder. There was also a lot of propaganda that it was discontinued because it didn't work and machines had a higher failure rate, but this was never evidenced, nor did it make any sense. It wasn't dropped or phased out, and this machine is still for sale in France as of recording in early 2021, where the cylinder form factor is actually popular. The kinetic technology is amazing, as I've discussed in a previous video linked to in the description, and will be more thoroughly looked at in a future video using this machine. Although it isn't clear why it hasn't yet made its way into Dyson's cordless cleaners. This is the only cylinder cleaner that doesn't topple over and will self-right when knocked over. One interesting consequence of the cylinder design is that it can be tipped upside down and knocked on its side, so all the dust in the bin can fall back and potentially choke the metal shroud, which would lead to cyclonic failure. This isn't a problem for uprights because they never normally tip upside down in use and have long bins. So the brilliant design for the latest and final cylinder was to put the metal shroud inside a cyclonic shroud within the main bin. The dust and dirt comes in and spins around the inside of this inner cyclone with incredible force. It then blasts out of the bottom side gap into the main bin. This blasting effect from the new cyclone prevents any dust getting back in or near the metal shroud, stopping it from getting buried and clogged, at least as long as you don't go over the max fill line and block the main bin up. I wondered why such a brilliant feature hadn't been included on the modern stick vacs, and it's probably because of space constraints. Instead, the V10 and V11, which can be used upside down, employed a rubber skirt which attempted to keep the bin contents in the lower regions. It works for fibrous material, but if the bin is full of fine dust, such as after using Dyson Zorb, tipping it upside down can result in the shroud getting buried. I'd encourage Dyson to re-employ this brilliant shroud protecting bin cyclone design, particularly as they have wider bins now in their outsized models. The relatively clean air that's free of the main dirt leaves the bin through the smaller metal shroud that sits inside this new cyclone, and heads to the superb kinetic cyclones, where smaller dirt is removed than by any other cyclone, including Dyson's own non-kinetic cyclones. They're so efficient they eliminate the need for a pre-motor filter. The mostly clean air then passes through the lifetime HEPA filters, where the nearer nanoscopic particles are removed. They don't amount to much by mass, but are harmful to health. This means the filter never clogs in its 10 years intended lifetime, and there are no filters to maintain, although you can still access and rinse the filters, as I'll show in a future video. It's an amazingly well-conceived filtration system that works amazingly, as long as it's not abused or overfilled. The bin is also spring-loaded and scrapes the shroud clean for you when you empty it using the rubber squeegee. There's literally no maintenance needed. There's a spring-loaded suction relief valve on the bin in case you suck up a sock, to avoid the motor overheating. The new cyclone also has a trapdoor that opens as well to let out anything scraped off the shroud. Pressing this lever shuts it again, and that's done automatically by this peg when you close the bin again. The discharge chamber of the internal kinetic cyclones empties down this wide chute and is emptied with the main bin and bin cyclone at the same time. This is by far the best cyclonic filtration and bin system Dyson have ever made, and I only hope they bring back this technology and approach in future cordless models. It wasn't clear why the final upright didn't also use kinetic technology and auto-clean the shroud, which I think is a step backwards, especially as there was a kinetic upright design which did just this. If the upright had the bin features and kinetic technology of the cylinder model, it would be the greatest upright model design ever. But instead, only some technologies made it into the final version before they moved on to better formats. Emptying the upright bin is also easy and messless. Dyson have bin empty mechanisms which can avoid dust splashing, as discussed in a video linked to in the description. The raised lip on the upright's bin always catches dust though, making it more difficult to get rid of, and it's only there as a consequence of space saving on the main machine where the pipes are. The cylinder bin is actually too wide to fit into my bin, so it's more awkward to empty, and is best done into the next bin liner if you have narrow tall bins. The point and shoot mechanism of the cordless models remains the easiest and quickest way to empty they've ever developed that blows the competition away. The upright has a new articulating handle design which you lift off, clip on a tool and can pivot. But using the hose on Dyson uprights has always been a pain that dwarfs the benefits of an articulating handle. The pullback of the springy hose makes it hard work to do any above floor cleaning, and the machine never follows obediently, especially if a wire gets in the way. It's just a fundamental problem with the upright format. The machine also came with caddies to store the usual crevice and stir tool, and one to store the tangle-free turbine tool on the machine itself, although the downside is that this adds to the weight and bulk of the machine. The tool set on each machine is comparable and the usual affair for Dyson machines, providing you with everything you need, with more niche tools available to purchase separately. While there are no filters to maintain on the kinetic model, the upright, which does require filter maintenance, has separate pre- and post-motor filters that can be rinsed. They recommend monthly, but this is likely to manage odours if you suffer from them. I've shown in another video linked to in the description that their cyclonic filtration prevents these filters from accumulating much dust at all. The floor heads on these machines were interesting. The cylinder had the pneumatic head. This has no rotating brush bar and is just straight suction, but has some interesting features that elevate it above some of the poorer, bog-standard designs you'll get on weaker products, like the Henry or many commercial vacuums. Firstly, its name comes from its internal air springs, which compress when on to ensure it makes a good suction seal to the floor to maximise the speed of the air through the pile. Secondly, it has a ridge that flips as you pull it back and forth to help manually separate the pile. As the performance data shows, this helps it achieve excellent performance and is far beyond many competitor products with straight suction heads. Thirdly, it has front channels to help direct large particles in. It also has side suction channels. What I don't like about this head though is that it skips and bounces on pullback on some carpets, depending on how you pull it relative to the nap. It makes it very frustrating to use. It can also be a bit tiring to drag back and forth, given that rotating brush bars often help the head move more freely, as with the turbine tool. You can reduce suction by moving the dial to minus to bleed in some relief air, and you've also got a finger pull on the wand to open another valve to further reduce suction. This reduces performance though, and still results in occasional bouncing. The suction is so strong though that when it's not bouncing, it can sometimes lift the carpet when you pull back, which can be a problem on vinyl flooring and be torn off the underfloor. The lack of a rotating brush bar also means the pile isn't lifted and it still looks flat after vacuuming. I'm not really a fan of these straight suction heads, even the best ones on the market that Dyson produce, and I can't figure out why they made this type of head when historically they've had powerful motor-driven brush bar heads on older cylinder models. Straight suction heads also don't capture pet hair as well. The wand is extendable, and 3 clicks gives it the same length as the upright. But it only rests in the clip if it's at its unusable minimum length, so you're usually left dropping it on the floor when you're done. The hose is also awkward to use and feels as though it gets in the way, and it's very annoying when you suddenly have to yank it to make the trailing main unit catch up. I'm not really a big fan of the cylinder form factor. The upright's head is the progenitor of the ones found on the latest cordless series. It has a wide and powerful epicyclic brush bar that separates pile well, side suction channels to achieve pickup outside the head, and is really quiet. It doesn't use belts, so eliminates that weak link, which also allows for full width cleaning, given the drive motor is embedded within the brush bar itself. It really grips to the floor well, yet moves so smoothly, and leaves the finest full width groom lines. It comes with the now standard head gate sliders, which allow for suction relief on hard floors that would otherwise immovably clamp the head, as well as letting in larger particles. This allows all kinds of dust and larger particles to be extracted without needing to change heads or relying on a silly dual roller system, which causes more problems than it solves. The minus setting has been dropped on future models and allowed suction relief through the top vents, but closed the front gates. Opening the front gates achieves the same thing really, so this feature didn't survive future iterations on the cordless models. There are also felt strips on the base which are excellent at removing fine dust. The V10 and 11 use carbon fibre bristles to achieve this, but there's something to be said about the silkier feel and quieter sliding of the felt strips relative to the hard plastic of the V10 and 11, which scrape more along hard floors. I'd like to see the felt strips making a return on the cordless heads, in addition to the carbon fibre bristles. The cylinder comes with a rotating turbine head, which is designed for pet hair, but it's very narrow though, and not practical to vacuum large areas of floor, even though it performs better. The inclusion of this comes across as though they were just trying to offload existing stock from older models and throwing in an old design rather than developing something new for a product they knew there was going to be a thing of the past. The upright model also came with a similar tool. It's a slightly different design with only one row of each type of bristles, but doesn't seem to spin as fast, seems to struggle on the carpet, and didn't perform anything like as well in testing. But on the upright, it was only ever intended to be used to reach under low furniture. The cylinder has a nice cord rewind feature, but the upright requires you to deal with the cord hassle manually. I always thought the uprights would benefit from a cord rewind, but it never appeared. Fortunately, we don't have to bother with cords anymore anyway. Storing the cylinder is awkward because it's an obscure shape with wands and flailing hoses poking out all over the place. The upright is much easier to store, with its size and weight being the only bugbears. Overall, each of these machines has the pros and cons. The cylinder is easily the best bin design, the best filtration on the market that eliminates filter maintenance, the best manoeuvrability for a cylinder that's untoppleable, but its straight suction head is harder to use and doesn't perform as well, especially for pet hair that's interlocked in the pile. The rotating turbine head they provide has excellent performance, but doesn't feel good to use and is too small to be practical for wide area cleaning. The upright is the utter performance champion and the best on the entire market. It has the best cleaner head and brush bar design that's quiet and feels good to use. But it lacks kinetic technology or a self-cleaning shroud, which means more hassle for the user. Both machines are the quietest mains machines I've ever used for the performance level, but they're both a hassle to use relative to modern cordless because they're heavy, bulky, and have too much cord management. They're light years beyond the competition still, despite that Dyson haven't been developing them for years. But I'd never recommend a mains machine nowadays. The future is cordless, and the technology continues to mature, singularly at Dyson's hand, whilst the competition plays perpetual catch-up and copycatting and are many years behind. Dyson's V11 cordless onwards are now at their mains counterpart's performance level, but with huge practicality and usability benefits, as I've covered in their reviews. There are some nice existing features still to appear in the cordless models from the mains machines, such as the amazing cylinder bin design that prevents shroud burying when upside down, and the kinetic tech to avoid all but voluntary filter maintenance, as well as the felt strips on the floor head. I hope you liked this retrospective review, and thanks for watching.